November 19th. We have been in camp this week, getting ready for winter. By the time we got here, most of the men had already chosen their tent mates for the cold months ahead. Only Johnny Henderson, Charlie Shelp, and myself was left, and I was glad to be with Johnny, since he is as near a friend as I have. We was also joined by a new man from Syracuse, Washington Evans. Washington said his father is a carpenter, and that after the war he would be too, and it turned out to be a great fortune to have him when we built our stockade tent. Ours is sturdier than most, with a tightly constructed stone and stick chimney topped by a handsome pork barrel. Inside, Washington put together furniture, including a barrel table and 4 stools. We are the envy of the company, and even Lieutenant Toms came out of his tent to inspect our work and said it was the coziest he had ever seen. 8 new men have joined G Company, though none are as welcome as our Washington. Had the shakes for 5 days, but not bad enough to visit a doctor. Thank heavens. That Reb boy came back a few times in my dreams, but has faded away again. The only thing we lack now is food, or rather a variety of it, corn being plentiful. It is hard to believe how many ways we can cook our corn. We have parched corn, boiled corn dough mush, corn coffee, and the latest invention to make it go down good is to half parch it, then grind it coarse, like hominy, and then boil it with a small piece of pork as a season. This last is the best by far. November 20th. Very cold, with our day used stacking boxes and barrels near the commissary depot. Lieutenant Toms gave instructions and then stood off by himself. He is about as downhearted as a man can get. Lieutenant Toms was a schoolteacher in a tiny town near Syracuse before the war, but hoped to have a military career after. Now he is certain he will never be allowed to rise above lieutenancy, and that he will always be given the worst assignments. I think he may be right. The new men are all sick with bowel complaints, though none are serious cases so far. The good news today is that the boxes and barrels we wrestled contain soft bread and desiccated vegetables, so we will have something to go with our corn. Later, Johnny and Charlie Shelp have been at it again, and this time Shelp landed several good punches, and Johnny's face is swelling up and raw. I wasn't there, or I would have stepped between them to spare Johnny some. By the time I heard about the fight and got to our tent, Sergeant Donahue was telling Shelp to leave Johnny alone from then on. Shelp did not take the sergeant's words well, and said this was none of his affair. So Sergeant Donahue, who was a very big man, but of a calm and peaceful nature, usually, hit Shelp so hard his feet left the ground. When Shelp recovered enough to sit up, Sergeant Donahue told him to get his equipment and move to the last tent in our row, which is the closest to the swamp and not very well made either. "You can't order me to move," Shelp shouted. "Only the lieutenant can." "If you want," Sergeant Donahue said in a low, menacing way, "I will move you myself with this," and he held a fist in Shelp's face. The sergeant looked around and said, "Williams and Davis, help this man up into his new home. Wyatt and Dottie, get his things out of here. Have one of the new men move into his tent. And Shelp, if you bother Private Henderson again, you will answer to me. Now move." The new man's name is Charlie Buell, so we still have a Charlie among us. He is 30, I would guess, or around there, and he carries himself well, being tall and fit-looking, and speaking in a clear, precise voice. Like just about every other man who has the ability, Charles has a mustache, though his is very neatly trimmed. He said he was a lawyer in his hometown of Manulus, and joined after helping several escaped slaves get to Canada. He seems a good exchange for Shelp, and our winter should be more pleasant for it. Johnny is being treated like a wounded hero for having freed us of the enemy. I certainly think he did. November 23rd. Captain Clapp came this morning, and after a brief visit, Lieutenant Toms was happy as he had been in a long time. I was glad to see this change in the lieutenant, but I knew it meant trouble for me, and I was right. There is to be some sort of surprise action soon, and Captain Clapp wants G Company to be part of his command. So I will not have a quiet and safe winter after all. Lieutenant Toms called the men together to tell us what he knew, which was not much other than that we would leave in a few days and be close to the Mine Run River. We have a chance to prove ourselves, he told us. Maybe our only chance. I want this company to be the best in the 122nd. He even asked about the company journal, which he has not shown interest in for many days. He glanced through it and seemed pleased, but he did say, "Peace, why are you still going on about your bad luck? Didn't your people teach you any better?" I was going to say I was brought up on the Bible, which is full of magic and miracles, and even a story about Jonah and his bad luck with the whale. So why is being cursed so strange? But I didn't, because I didn't want to sound like a blasphemer, and I didn't want to miss supper again. "Well, just keep your head down and do what you have always done, and you will be fine. Do you hear?" "Yes, sir," I answered, but I can't say that I was much reassured. His only other comment about the journal was that I should list the new men, but I don't want to use up the space till we see who deserts. Then Lieutenant sent Caesar to the sutler for some provisions, and we are to have a special meal tonight. I was happy then that I held my tongue. A Thanksgiving meal, Lieutenant Toms told us, for our deliverance. November 24th. Lieutenant Toms is quite happy today, but the rest of us are feeling stuffed and sluggish because of our meal, which consisted of real eggs, soft bread, butter that was not more than a week or two old, beef stew with real potatoes, dried peaches, and coffee and sugar. After dinner, Lieutenant Toms brought out 8 bottles of whiskey, which must have cost a great deal, since we have not seen this in over 2 months. And Sergeant Donahue gave each of us a share in our coffee. It was a fine feast and enjoyable, though. Shelp seems to have turned his mouth on me, repeating often that he did not want to stand near an unlucky Jonah boy. We will see where this leads. Ask Corporal Bell, Jehiel Lamphere, and the Wyatt boys about their pasts, but no one is in a mood to talk, which is just as well, because I am in no mood to write. November 26th. Sergeant Donahue woke us this morning before sunrise with "Happy Thanksgiving. Prepare to march in 20 minutes." And we did, this time as part of Captain Clapp's unit. 4 o'clock. Crossed the Rapidan River just above the Mine Run River at 10 and was immediately given a Reb salute of flying Minnie balls. Our company got sent out, along with K Company, to shoo our Secesh friends away while the army marched on. The woods and underbrush was something thick, so we did not move in any particular order. Crouching low, we went from tree to tree, trying to avoid the hot metal coming at us while working our way toward the sound and smoke of the firing. I have to admit to being very nervous as we entered the woods. I even started to have trouble breathing and had to take in little gulps of air, but I kept moving forward by watching the man in front of me, who happened to be Johnny Henderson, and dashed ahead whenever he did. My breathing settled down some and was almost normal when I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. I was sure I had a Reb located, maybe 400 feet away, and I pointed my musket at the tree near his position. I was holding steady, aiming, finger on the trigger, when I heard the loud crack of a shot out of the many that was crackling around me, and then the whooshing sound of the ball coming at me. I know this does not seem possible, but stranger things have happened in this strange war, and I know what I heard. So I ducked, and just then the ball sent my forage cap sailing. I was so startled I just sat there on the ground, staring at my cap with its new ventilation hole through the band, and wondering what that ball would have done to my head if I hadn't moved. "You okay? You okay?" Johnny screamed in my ear, all excited. And I nodded. "Let's go then. Come on," he yelled, pulling me to my feet. "Lieutenant Toms has ordered a bayonet charge, and we are lagging." Johnny started dragging me along, and I stumbled, then righted myself and began to run on my own, fumbling to put on my bayonet as I did. I hardly had a chance to look where I was going before I plunged through a tangle of leaves and branches and followed the others, who was 40 feet in front and plunging through the leaves and branches too. Suddenly I found myself very mad at what had almost happened to my head, and I wanted to get the Reb who had fired at me, whoever he might be. Lieutenant Toms was way out in the front, maybe 100 feet from me, his sword raised high in his right hand, and shouting, "Come on, boys, come on! This way!" And I thought what a fool he was to be out there like that, all alone. and at the same time my legs began moving faster, and I made up the ground between myself and the rest of the company. I was just a few steps behind one of the new men, with the rest of the company spread out on either side. I didn't notice anyone else, but I am sure Willie Dodd was near, because Spirit, who hadn't been tied up, was to my left and weaving this way and that way through the holes in the underbrush and barking madly. The Rebs was still firing on us, and the hissing of lead was all around. Just then the new man went down in a heap ahead of me. That ball was meant for me, I thought, which made me the madder still. And then I realized he had just gotten his bayonet snagged on some vines and tripped over his own clumsy feet. But that didn't make me any less mad at the Rebs. I leaped over the new man, and a second later I was right next to the lieutenant and heading into the smoke of a recently fired Reb gun. I saw a shadow move up ahead and thought about stopping to fire, when I remembered those shadows coming at us at Gettysburg, and thought the better of it. I did not want to cause the lieutenant any more trouble. So I ran at it, musket lowered now, and my bayonet aimed at its center, its stomach, and let out a howling scream that startled even me. Just then the woods in front of me began to crackle like popping corn tossed into a hot fire, and the air around me vibrated and whizzed as the minis flew over, around, and near me. I had not one thought in my silly head as I ran at the enemy, except that I was going to get the one who shot at me. I did have this strange feeling at the same moment, just a feeling, not any words, that I needed to protect the lieutenant, though why he would need me to protect him I wouldn't know. The smoke from the volley rolled out to meet me, and a thought did enter my head then. The thought was, on the other side of that smoke are a whole lot of Rebs with muskets and bayonets waiting for you. But by the time that thought was all strung together, I was in the smoke and knew it was too late to do anything else. So I screamed again and lunged forward, bayonet extended. Which is when Lieutenant Tom's voice broke through clearly. "Pease, what the hell are you doing? Get back here!" Which was also when I came through the wall of smoke and discovered, well, nothing. The Rebs was gone, and the only trace of them was their backs as they skedaddled through the trees. I guess I should have fired on such easy butternut targets, but I was breathing so hard I probably wouldn't have held my musket too steady. Besides, I didn't see the point. We had driven them away from the rest of the army, which is what our orders had been. Lieutenant Toms and the other men came up then. Everyone started talking at once. The lieutenant wanting to know why I charged so far ahead by myself, and saying I could have been killed. The others patting me on the back and making all kinds of noise about how I'd driven off General Robert E. Lee's army single-handed, that I was a regular hero, and so forth. But the only thing I can say, between gasps of breathing, was, "Where is my cap?" which Johnny dashed off to receive. That's when Sergeant Donahue said, "Look at that," and pointed to my stomach. There was a ragged hole in my uniform. I unbuttoned my shirt and pulled out this journal, which I kept in there whenever we leave camp so I will not lose it, and so no one else will steal it. The cover, which is of a hard board, had a clean hole in it, and the ball itself was lodged inside, having made a journey all the way to the entrance about Gettysburg. "Lord!" Johnny exclaimed when he came back and examined the hole in my cap and the ball in the journal. "You are one lucky soldier for sure." But I didn't see it that way. As far as I was concerned, the lead was getting closer and closer, and it was only a matter of time before it hit its mark. Only 3 wounded in our company. Corporal J. Bell was shot in the leg, and the doctor says the bone is broken. W. Zellers was hit in the shoulder, though the injury is not bad. And W. Bateman had his left eye nearly poked out by a branch he ran into. But he says he aims with his other, so he will be okay. Assorted other bruises and sprains and cuts. All minor. November 27th. After our skirmish yesterday, we marched double time till we caught up with the rest of the 122nd. Lieutenant Toms received a personal "well done" from Captain Clapp and some other officers after K Company's captain related what took place in the woods. This cheered all of us who went to see our Lieutenant Toms restored in rank some day. There were nice words for me, too, but by this time I had found my tongue, and said I was just following Lieutenant Tom's orders, and had gotten confused in the smoke, which is true, I think. The boys have been studying the recovered ball very carefully, and say it is a lucky charm, and that I should keep it in my pocket. I said I did not want anything to do with it, because the metal attracts more metal, so now the boys are going to pass it around among themselves. each one getting to hold it for a day. November 28th. Woke to heavy rain and grumbling thunder. The 122nd was ordered to join up with General Warren's Second Corps, so we and thousands of other soldiers spent the day clomping through mud. Everyone fears another mud march, such as we had last January, but that would not bother me. Mud is a lot safer than fighting. Besides, every time I think about what a fool thing I did in those woods and what could have happened, I become very excited, and then, afterwards, I get sleepy and want to find a warm blanket. So I am marching with my eyes half opened. November 30th. Yesterday we worked like beavers, throwing up protective breastworks and preparing to charge the Rebs. The enemy had a strong position, with swamps and gullies behind and to the sides, so any run at them would have been straight on across a wide open field 1,000 yards long. For some reason I continued to be exhausted and fell asleep often, but at least this prevented me from worrying. Even the occasional shots exchanged did not disturb my rest. At nightfall the order to charge was revoked, and we withdrew. Lieutenant Tom said it was smart to call off the charge, since not enough of us would have been left alive to bury the dead. Henry Wyatt called out, "I would have," because he was the holder that day of the Lucky Minnie, as the ball is now called. "Just stay clear of Jonah Boy," Shelp said. "He is marked, no doubt about it, and so is anyone around him." Sergeant Donahue went to say something to Shelp, but I said not to, and that he didn't bother me, which wasn't true, but I did not need Shelp to be even angrier at me than he already seems to be. We are at the Rapidan River today, and will cross tomorrow. Lieutenant Toms thinks our fighting is finished for the year. Finally. And I, for one, will be happy to be back at Brandy Station and in our safe, warm home.